Hey, so I thought I might do a quick video summarizing the different musical or harmonic systems that are found commonly in jazz. So this will be a purely theoretical video. When transcribing or analyzing a song's chord progression, it's important to first look at the harmonic framework within which it's set before diving into the actual chords used. So it's a kind of macro to micro approach. Now, when trying to determine what kind of musical system a song is using, you really need to look for three things. Whether the song uses a functional harmony or not, whether the song has a tonal center or not, and whether the song is diatonic, that is, in a particular key, or not. And based on these three characteristics, you can determine what musical system this song is using. Now, the four musical systems that are most widely used in jazz are tonal, modal, pedal point, and atonal. Now, I have separate videos on all of these musical systems, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. This is just a quick summary video. But nevertheless, let's quickly go through the table in the picture-in-picture. Now, by definition, functional chord progressions must have a tonal center. So we can rule out two of those boxes immediately. Next, if a chord progression is functional, has a tonal center, and is diatonic, then it's using a tonal musical framework. Now, this type of music is heard in most jazz before 1960. And it allows for modulation, so changing between keys and thus changing the tonal center, but nevertheless always retaining one. So you'd have chord progressions like ones that are clearly leading to that tonic chord as a kind of resolution. Next, if you have a functional chord progression, a tonal center, but non-diatonic chords, then we're still within that tonal musical framework. We're just using some more interesting devices like chord substitutions, secondary dominants, and borrowed chords. So for example, you could have a chord progression as follows. Right, so we're in the key of C major. I went from the E minor 7 to the A7, but the A7 isn't in the key of C major, right? It's got that C sharp. But that's okay, that's just a secondary dominant. Our tonal center stays the same. Similarly, from the D minor 7, we went to a D flat 7, which isn't in the key of C major, but it's just a tritone substitution of the G7. So again, we're keeping that same tonal center. And then of course, finishing on that C major 7. Next, if you have a non-functional chord progression, a tonal center, and only use diatonic chords, so chords within a particular key, then we have modal harmony, like what's found in modal jazz, where you have chord progressions like this. Next, if you have non-functional chord progressions, no tonal center, but still use diatonic chords or chords from a particular key, then you have something that I've called pandiatonicism. Now, this is relatively rare in jazz, but nevertheless, you have chord progressions that stick to a particular key, so chords that are derived from one particular diatonic key, but that don't outline any particular tonal center. Next, if we have a non-functional chord progression, a tonal center, but use non-diatonic chords, then we have pedal point harmony. Now this is used in some free jazz, some post-bop, and fusion. Now the idea here is that you have a single tonal center which you use either as a pedal point, so just keep repeating, or play some kind of ostinato which outlines the C as the kind of tonal center. the chords don't have to be from any one particular key. You can just play more or less whatever chords you like, as long as you keep reinforcing that tonal center in your left hand. And finally, if you have a non-functional chord progression, no tonal center, and non-diatonic chords, then you have an atonal harmony or musical system. Now this is used by some free jazz, some modal jazz, some post-bop, and a lot of sort of contemporary or more modern jazz. And I will have a separate video where I will go into this in a little bit more detail. But for example, you could have a chord progression as follows. Right, so A major 7, going to C minor 7, to B flat major 7, to E minor 7. Now, those chords don't in any way really relate to each other. They're not from a particular key, they're not like secondary dominants or chord substitutions or borrowed chords, and they don't really establish any given tonal center. They kind of float around by themselves, and any chord can go to literally any other chord. You don't have to keep to any kind of key or pattern or anything like that. But like I said, I will have more to say about that in a future video. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope that sort of gave you a high-level and holistic overview or summary of the different musical systems within which you can write or play or listen to jazz. And yeah, cool. Thanks guys. See ya.